Hi, Sam from Guitar Village here. We recently had a great interview with Roger Mayer. We learned so much about his pedals and quite a bit about Jimi Hendrix as well. Due to the popularity of that and you guys having a load more questions, we decided to get him back in to answer some of them. At this point, I want to say thanks to Milstat. If you're not already aware of him, he's a fellow YouTuber and he is pretty much an authority on Hendrix tones. So he helped us put a load of these questions together. So big thanks to him. Now, because you guys had so many questions, we're breaking this up into two parts. This is part one and part two will follow very shortly. So, without further ado, let's get stuck in. What brand of strings did Jimmy use?
Fender Rock and Roll Light 150 series.
150. Okay, and how often did he change the strings, and did he even do it himself?
Oh yeah, well the strings, first of all, the 150 series Rock and Roll Light strings were, the gauge used were 10, 13, 15, 26, 32, 38, and they were pure nickel wound. They weren't nickel plated steel, and the pure nickel strings are slightly less magnetic than a steel wound string, but a softer sound, better sound.
Okay. Do you know what type of picks he used?
Manny's picks, medium.
Medium, okay. Yeah. Now, why did Jimmy string his low E string, the wound string, on the wrong side of the peg?
The wrong side of the peg?
Yeah, so there's some pictures where instead of going from the nut and winding the same way as the other strings, he goes the other way around with it.
That's news to me.
Oh, fair enough.
Well, Jimmy changed strings quite often because many times some of the guitars, especially if he had, rate the guitar on the amplifier, the actual action of doing that had actually cut through the wound part of the strings.
Oh, wow.
So the strings were like useless. So you had two scenarios. Number one was the strings were obviously, no good. And the other time was they never really stood the chance of wearing out, because Jimmy played very, very powerfully and very loud. So the strings, I would say, it would be nothing to change the strings almost every day.
Wow, yeah, it's a lot. I think that's where modern pros tend to do the same thing as well now.
Yeah, about every day. I mean, going up on stage when Jimmy was playing, I would have a back pocket with at least 5 or 6 first strings and B strings.
Oh, we got through that many?
Oh yeah, we could break 5 E strings easily.
Wow, on what? Just on one gig?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Incredible. Now, did Jimmy have a particular method for tuning his guitars?
Yeah, by ear.
So he literally just got one string perfect. Did he use like anything for a reference or?
Well, not really, because we didn't really carry around tuning forks with us, and the fact of the matter is that there was no such thing as an electronic tuner. So the only other choice you might have had in the studio was to tune off a piano. But there again, if you were recording with the brass section, you wouldn't want to tune necessarily to a piano. You would want to tune to a B flat or an E flat from the horn.
Yes.
Because it wouldn't sound right.
Okay. If Jimmy only found, I think this goes back to our previous interview actually. So I think you said that out of 20 strats, 2 would have been good. What was Jimmy looking for in particular? And how did he pick out what he wanted to hear from his guitars?
Well, I mean, basically, many times we didn't have the luxury of having that big a choice. 1968, you could go to Manny's and you didn't have that much choice. Maybe you'd have to arrive there when they just had a brand new shipment, and even then you might only have 20 guitars to look at, of which they would be all the combinations of, the different necks. It might be rosewood and maple, or maple, and so on and so forth. But there again, Jimmy's hands, quite large, and my hands are similar. So you would know just by picking the guitar up in 5 seconds whether it would suit someone.
Yeah.
So I mean, a very thin neck would be of no use to Jimmy, you know.
So ideally, the neck would be the first port of call then when
Well,
choosing the right guitar.
It's the only selection process. We would select guitars just by taking them out of the box, not even taking them fully out of the cardboard box, but just pull it out so you could feel the neck, right? And once you found one where your hand felt good, then you might take it out of the box, but you never plug it into an electric amplifier. It's pointless.
You know it's going to sound good anyway.
No, it's not going to sound good, but you get used to when you see a lot of guitars, you get used to how the wood sounds, and that's what you have to go by. Because if the wood doesn't sound right, the electronics is not going to do anything.
Yeah, fair enough.
You're just wasting your time.
Okay, I've got a question here. They're asking, how did Jimmy conquer the volume and tone controls being in the way? Obviously, as his guitar was flipped over. There's some photos that it appears he would remove the volume knob to keep from hitting it all the time.
No, it just probably got knocked off.
He's just going for it. And
No. The actual volume control knob would never be removed on purpose.
So Jimmy would have been playing hard, thrashing it away, and then just popped it off.
Or that particular photograph was taken at the end of the set, where you're virtually looking at a sacrificial guitar.
Ah, I see.
So
yeah.
it didn't matter whether you had a knob on it or not.
Someone's asked, were you involved with the actual setup of the guitars? You know, did he like his tremolo set flat to the body or floating up in the air?
Well, we used to set them obviously. Well, one of the secrets in the Stratocaster is we always use 5 springs for a start.
Yeah.
Now, with the Stratocaster tremolo, one of the most important things is to get the tension on the 5 screws. There's 5 screws that with the tremolo block pivots around, and you have to get those in the exact tension that they should be, so that when the tremolo block rocks, it comes back to the same position.
Yes.
If you get 1 or 2 of them wrong, then the tremolo block starts going skew whiff, then the whole guitar goes out of tune. So, you know, it has to be done correctly.
Okay. Did Jimmy like the string action on his Strats, high or low?
Well, using the set of strings that I told you, it would be it becomes quite funky. You know, in other words, the lower string vibrates much more than it would do if you were using, say, you know, a 44 or 48. So you can play funkier, which actually means you can actually lower the action on the bass strings, and you've also got the fact with that you've got what should we say? It's easier to do you know, vibrato on the bass strings.
Yeah.
Because they're slightly slacker. So it really opens up a whole new avenue of playing by not using very, very thick strings on the bass. And it also means that you can hit the strings much harder than you could if you had the you know, the fatter set of strings.
Yes.
Which we never really used at all.
Did he do the same when he was using his V as well, do you know?
Well, Gibson Flying V is completely different, because what you've got with a Gibson Flying V is you've got a different scale length to start with, right? Number one. And number two, you've got the fact of the matter is of the way that the strings are actually attached. Yeah. Now, with the Stratocaster, you have to take into account the full length of the string. In other words, if you're going to bend the string, you are bending the string right from where it's attached to, all the way through to the tuning peg, right?
Yeah.
Now, that's not the case with a Gibson. The actual string lengths on a Gibson tend to be shorter.
Yes.
By quite a lot, really, 2 or 3 inches maybe.
So do you think he would use different strings to compensate for that?
No, not really.
So most likely the same setup on
because
both.
we didn't buy 2 sets of strings. We were lucky we had enough strings anyway, you know.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I think so. You've answered about him breaking strings quite a bit. Did he break a lot of trem arms?
No.
Never, just or seldom,
No,
I
because
guess.
you can put a Stratocaster on the floor, you can jump up and down on the tremolo arm and you won't break it.
Fair enough.
And he did.
Okay, someone's asked. This is an interesting question, actually, which tickled me a bit. Did Jimmy move the Strat string tree closer to the nut to hold his cigarette better?
What? Never heard of that one.
Fair enough. Well, let's move on. This one, I'm not sure if you'll know or not. How did you put a Telecaster neck on Jimmy's Strat at the Newport Jazz Festival?
I wasn't there.
No, fair enough. I thought that might be a bit far-fetched, that one. So, obviously, when you you take a right-handed Strat, you flip it over to left-handed. He strings is like a right-handed player would, kind of, but the opposite way round. So you've got the low E string closest to your face and high E string furthest away. I presume the nut slots would need to be cut for that. Guitar setup.
Or the whole nut reversed.
Just pop it out, spin it around, and put it back in.
Reglue it, put it back in.
Probably a bit easier as well, isn't it?
Yeah, a lot faster.
Now, this is the last in the guitar-specific questions. What are the facts and your opinion about Seymour Duncan's pickups, and did Jimmy really like them and use them?
Well, to be honest, I mean, when Seymour came to me, and he reminded me of one concert that I first met him, maybe Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And he said he rocked up with a bunch of pickups, and we changed them over. And at the time, you know, I mean, we didn't start using Jimmy Seymour Duncan pickups after that meeting.
Yeah.
Now, Seymour probably just said, "Oh, why didn't you try these out, Jimmy?" And we probably had a few guitars that needed a few pickups. But I mean, when I first met Jimmy, and we went through all the permutations of various amounts of wire and magnets that you could use on the pickups, you know.
Yeah.
The standard ones are fine, you know, and I mean, I don't think so. I mean, to be honest, I mean, you know, I mean, you can sit down with anyone who winds a pickup up, and they will give you all kinds of nonsense about magnetism and how many turns they put on it. But the fact of the matter is, you put more turns on a pickup, there's a trade-off between the frequency response with more turns and less turns. And that's it, you know.
So you'd say there's not a right or wrong way to do it. It's just some people like doing it one way and some like doing it another way.
Well, they don't really have, to be honest with you, with a lot of pickups, they don't have a lot of unique selling points with them. I mean, if you look at a pickup, whether it's a staggered magnet pickup or this and that only changes the balance of the standard guitar. It's subtle, really. You know, it's not dramatic. You're not going to get a dramatic change with any form of pickup. And the reason for that is quite simple: is the pickup is a magnetic pickup, right, which picks up the vibration of the string vibrating.
Yeah.
That's it. Now, what's important is what kind of string you got, how the string is vibrating, and then you get down to the what wood are you using, what the setup is, this and this. You've got about 8 other factors, because the magnetic pickup can only pick up the vibration of the string. Get that in your head. It doesn't conjure up any magical sound or sound difference than that. In other words, if you change the lamination on the neck to, say, maple, rosewood, it sounds different. It's got nothing to do with the pickup. It's obvious it's the vibration of the string. So you've got to look at it from a scientific standpoint. It's the vibration of the string. And that's the purpose of the magnetic pickup. Now, you do get into another scenario, which a lot of people made the mistake of. They started moving the pickups closer and closer towards the strings. Now, when you do that, and especially with a single pole piece magnet, you know, like a Stratocaster style pickup, you know, you can cause what is called a ghost bridge. You get a magnetic bridge is formed because the magnetism of the pickup is so close to the string, it's forming another bridge.
Yeah.
So as you play up the neck, not only it changes the intonation, it changes a lot of things, and it's a mistake a lot of people make. It's many times the best tone is got from lowering the pickups and then using amplification after that.
Yes.
Because if you lower the pickups, the actual magnetic field is wider, so it's got a wider field of capture of the string vibrating, especially if you bend it or something like that, which you don't get if the pickup's too close to the string. The other thing is that people can make the mistake is that if the pickup is mounted in the guitar, and the early Stratocasters used to be mounted on springs. The pickup was mounted on springs with quite a bit of clearance around the pickup. So you could push the pickup up and down and wobble it. And the reason for that was that you didn't want the acoustic feedback from the guitar body going into the pickup. And
Yes.
that creates that screech and howl, which you especially find on Telecasters. On the on one particular, I think it's the wouldn't be the bridge pickup. It would be the bridge pickup, the little small thin pickup.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the
Oh,
one.
okay, interesting.
And the fact of the matter is, if you get that phenomenon, you don't get the. What happens is, if you were playing loud and you got the guitar in front of an amplifier, the acoustic feedback that would go into the body of the guitar now does not only it gets polluted because the pickup is also vibrating at a different part of the guitar, so it's not necessarily picking up the correct vibration from the string. So ultimately, you really want a fully floating pickup that then it does the job of what it's supposed to do, is measure the vibration of the string.
Yeah, so it's only focused on the string and it's
Yeah.
not going to pick up anything from the body at all.
Yeah, you don't. I mean, pickups are always a little bit microphonic, but you want to get away from that.
Yeah.
That's why you have a microphone, and the expensive microphones have very, very elaborate suspension and damping, so the microphone sits, and it doesn't pick up, the all the rest of the vibration from the feet and the rest of the crap and so on and so forth. I mean, that's what sorts out a really good microphone, like from a Chinese copy. The Chinese copies tend to have a lot of cable noise because they haven't solved the problem of the cable being vibrated and then going into the microphone and then messing up the performance of it. So it's very, very similar in a way. So you do need acoustic isolation with microphones and with pickups. And then when you do have that, then you've got the choice of hearing the difference. If you haven't got it, then you wouldn't know.
Do you know what amps Jimmy used on tracks like Have You Been to Electric Ladyland and One Rainy Wish?
Two different recording sessions. The One Rainy Wish, I believe, was personally, that was done at Olympic, right? In Access Bowler's Love, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yes.
And so that was a different studio, and that definitely wasn't a Marshall.
Oh, okay, what was it?
Probably a Sound City or a Fender.
Brilliant. Changing it up a bit from the usual Marshalls then you always see them with live?
Well, we didn't use them, only in the actual recording we used which amplifier was appropriate, right? Even back on the Access Bowler's Love, Marshalls were used for one particular type of sound, and the Sound City was a cleaner type of distortion. Different distortion circuit of the amplifier was used for another thing. And also, you can't get away from the great sound that you get with a Fender.
Absolutely. That actually brings me on nicely to the next question. Someone has asked, did Jimmy set his amps clean or did he have them already distorting and then add fuzz to it?
There's no such thing as setting a Marshall clean. Marshall does not have a clean sound, and once the If you're talking about where the tone controls might have been set, man, that's got a certain amount of things. But no, the volume controls are normally kind of maxed out, and the amplifier was driven by the guitar.
Yeah. So he would turn the volume down on the guitar to get it to clean up a bit if needed.
Yes.
Ah.
And if a fuzz box was being used, then that would be used for additional feedback and distortion,
Yes.
which could be turned off and on. But there was enough distortion with the Marshall turned flat out, which you could control from the amplifier to give you a very broad spectrum of actual control, which is nice.
Ah, interesting. We've got another question about what amps he's using. What amp did Jimmy use on the early morning Voodoo Child jam with Steve Winwood and Jack Cassidy?
I don't even know where that was recorded.
Oh, fair enough. All right, a different question. It's still about amps, but who did the Marshall stacks maintenance on the road?
Would have depended what year.
Yeah.
And for instance, when I first went to America with Jimmy, right, the first amplifiers that we were given, right, in early 1968 were Fender,
Yes.
and we didn't get on too well with those. And then Jimmy had some Sun amplifiers that were donated to us,
Yeah.
and they didn't last very long on the road because they, various problems. And then we moved over, then Jimmy moved over to having some Marshalls moved over. Now, in America, this is a problem for the American listeners. The problem we had in America with the amplifiers was quite simply that the American voltage being 110 or 120, many times the actual current supply on the stage or the power supply on stage was insufficient. So what used to happen was when you actually played a big chord on stage, I had to go out and buy a special RMS power meter
Yeah.
to monitor the actual voltage that was coming to the amplifiers on stage, and it could dip from 120 down to 85 volts.
That much. Yeah.
That much. So after I found that out, then we got the Teamsters to actually run a special lead, right, from the lighting bar at the back of the stage to where Jimmy was having his amplifiers plug in to reduce the power surge lag
Yeah.
from the 110, because the 110 amplifier configuration by Marshall didn't use both sides of the transformer. It was a simple transformer that had basically one winding with a tap on it.
Yeah.
So one tap was 240 and the middle tap was 120. Now, what they should have done is have two separate windings and make the 110 winding be in parallel, right? And then you would have utilised the core of the transformer much more, so the actual transformer would have had much more dynamics. That's why many people that used Marshalls in America complained that they didn't sound as powerful as the 240 volt ones. That was because the amplifier design wasn't using the transformer configuration optimally.
Oh, that's really interesting. So we can't have a similar thing going the other way, apparently, with Fenders now, where they're set, for they're built for 110 in the States, 120, and then when they come over here, they're set for 230 for Europe, and then obviously we have 240 here in the UK. So there's some discrepancies.
There's the European people actually changed the ratification on the power for Europe. They changed the tolerances. They didn't change, so basically any voltage is okay from about, I don't know, I've forgotten exactly what it was, but it goes way down to about, 220.
Okay.
215, 220 up to 250 is considered in the ballpark.
As long as it works, I guess.
Well, no, they had to do that because, one country had, I mean, it's ridiculous because in America, you wouldn't find two ends of the street have got the same voltage.
Yeah.
Because of the way the American wiring is. It's not that good.
Okay, last question on amps. Were you involved at all with Jimmy's West Coast organ and amp Marshall mods?
No.
Fair enough. That's us done for amps. This is the section now. We're going to move on to the really in-depth stuff. The first one, let's start out with it. So, someone said they would love to know more about the new Octavia with the hand-wound ferrite transformer, and if it sounds much different to some of the other models like the Vision one.
Well, all I can say to them is, yes, it does sound different, and if they wanted to make a comparison, they'd have to put the two side by side.
Fair enough.
And make a personal decision.
Sounds like some more work for me in one of our videos then. Okay, moving on. So, someone said, I would love to know if HFE values for fuzz transistors matter that much, or is biasing them correctly the actual key to a good sounding fuzz pedal?
Well, that is, well, where to start there? That is a little bit of information has been convoluted by the person who doesn't even understand what an HFE value is, and then he's trying to equate the HFE value of a transistor, and then assume that it will make a difference, a huge difference. But then my question is, if he doesn't know what the circuit is and how it was biased and so on and so forth, and what voltage it was run at, there is a very technical answer, but that would be based upon the exact same circuit he might be interested in. That there is not a simple answer to that.
So it's a bit of a can of worms then.
Well, it's got really. It would be like saying, you've got a nice car, but does it matter what colour the paint colour of the car is? It's a bit like that.
Okay, that's understood. Now, we've got the last question in this section. Now, bear with me, it's quite a long question. I would like to know a little about the discussions you must have had with Jimmy as to the difference in sound and performance when Dallas Arbiter went from using the germanium, i.e. NKT275, to the silicon BC108 transistors in their fuzz faces. Did Jimmy notice a difference with them?
Well, basically, the way it was that had we had to deal with what we could buy today.
Yes.
And in 1968, the only ones that were available were the silicon ones, which would be, the early BC109s and that series of silicon transistors. There was a variation in the way that silicon transistors operated, but there again, I don't even remember with Jimmy him actually having any germanium fuzz faces. I don't remember seeing any myself, because I was more interested in developing a brand new style of fuzz box that got rid of all the problems that the silicon ones had, that picked up too much radio, they were unstable, they were this, they were that, So once again, it was another question. when they changed over the transistors from being germanium to silicon, there's only one reason they changed them. Huge price difference. The germanium transistors at that point in time would have been maybe 10 to 20 times more expensive than the silicon one. And the silicon ones were not available until 67 and 68.
So if Jimmy did use them, it would have been towards the very end then?
Of when? What? I don't even know in 1967 if you could buy a germanium one.
I see. Fair enough. Well, that kind of covers us for that section. That was quite in-depth, and I think I understood most of the answer. So that concludes part 1 of Questions with Roger Mayer. Part 2 will be coming out very shortly, so make sure you hit the subscribe button now to check it out.